I made a video a few months ago, just shortly after I bought this car, about daily driving a classic car, how I bought this car to be my daily driver. So a little different than your normal buying a classic car, and how I'm rejecting the new car industry. The new car industry is a scam, and all of that. I'll link that up here, I guess it is. And I stand by all of it. And so I wanted to give a bit of an update on what it's actually like in real life to drive one of these cars. First of all, let me explain. This car is a 1968 Ford Falcon. It is not, everybody asks me, oh, you got the 280? No, it doesn't have a 289. It's a 206 cylinder. It's a 3 on the tree, standard shift. This was the base model Falcon, not the Future or anything like that. And this is also a 4-door, as you can't already tell that. So this is not like a particularly, got air suspension in case you're wondering why those bumps there. It's not a particularly, it's not a muscle car, it's not a performance car, it's more of just a fun car, just your basic model sedan. That's what it is. However, being a 68 Falcon, they're somewhat rare because nobody saved these. This was the Ford Focus of 1968. So I get a lot of, oh wow, I haven't seen one of those in a very long time. And oh, I remember that when we were kids, but I haven't seen them ever. So I get a lot of that, but my point was when I've got it that I said that I'm going to drive these cars, these classics, as my daily car, and there's several reasons why I want to do that. Some of that is the practicality of it. The car was cheap to buy. You can buy these cars. If you look around, you can get something that was maybe somebody's project or in pretty good shape for not a lot of money. I mean, certainly under 10,000, but sometimes it's 5,000, 6,000, 8,000. I was talking to a guy at a car show. He bought a Rambler Classic, I think it was, or no, it was a Rambler American. Same thing. It was $5,000 he paid. Car is in beautiful shape, low mileage, and that's what he's doing. He's daily driving it, same as me. We had quite a chat about that. So that's number one. You can buy them quite, reasonably priced. If you're not looking for the super rare, Mustang Mach 1 or Roadrunner or those types of cars that are going to be a lot more money. If you're just looking for your standard regular car, these are available and they're pretty cheap. Second part to being a practical thing to drive is depending on the car you buy. Now, the guy that I was talking to with the Rambler is having some issues because AMC, right? So getting parts and things like that. This Ford Falcon mechanically is identical to a Ford Mustang. In fact, they made the Mustang out of Falcon parts, basically, when they first came out with it in '65. And that kind of continued on. So getting parts for this car, remarkably easy and cheap, believe it or not. In fact, if I compare it to modern cars, new cars, it's arguably cheaper in a lot of instances to fix these cars. I put on entire front brakes on this car, drums, shoes, hardware, the whole nine. It was $250 in parts. I did the work. Tires, they're 14-inch tires, so no weird size there. That was easy and cheap to get. It's just basic stuff. In terms of reliability for these cars, this has been ultra reliable. In fact, my wife's car, the 21 Ford Escape, has had a myriad of electronic and sensor issues and problems, and did let us down, did break down on the highway, broke down only because the parking sensors were gone for like a month. And it was at that point that the engine decided that, okay, you've had something wrong, so we're now going to put you into limp mode when you're far away from home, and had to get it towed. And it was a whole deal, a whole thing. That's never going to happen here because I don't have electronic sensors or things like that. This isn't very much more complicated than my ride-on lawnmower, to be honest with you. Carburetor, points ignition, very basic stuff, things you can fix with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers, and a basic socket set. It's going to be pretty much all you need here. So that's the other point. They're reliable, they're cheap to buy. This particular car, where it's a 200 cubic inch 6-cylinder and it's a 3-speed standard, is cheap to run. So gas mileage, this gets 26, 28 miles a gallon. As long as you're not driving like an idiot, which is kind of hard to do in this anyway. But these are, it's not, the old cars were not all gas guzzlers. The big land yachts, a big Buick with a 455, or the muscle cars that come, that are meant to be driven that way. Yeah, they're going to use a lot of gas, but the regular cars, contrary to popular belief, don't burn more gas than modern cars. I know we did a lot for fuel efficiency and things like that in recent years, and fuel injection, electronic ignition, and lots of things like that, but we also did a lot of stuff like catalytic converters and pollution control and things like that. So in the end, it really comes down to this. There's a lot of marketing. Ford has EcoBoost engines on their trucks, 2.7 liter EcoBoost, blah, blah, blah. They burn just as much gas as a 5 liter not EcoBoost, not turbo. Because of basic physics. Basic physics are, it takes a certain amount of energy to move a certain amount of mass through the air. That's it. Aerodynamics help a little bit. This car is kind of shaped like a brick, but it doesn't seem to matter because, like I said, I'm getting just as good gas mileage in this as you would in a modern SUV. It's not different. One of the other things is the engine is not turning an air conditioner or a power steering pump. I don't have power steering or anything like that, so there's not a big electrical demand on the car either. So there's not a lot of power accessories and stereos, there's not all that kind of stuff, so the alternator doesn't have that much of a drag on the engine either. So I guess for all of those reasons, this car isn't any less fuel efficient than a modern one. So there's that. So it's cheap to run, it's cheap to repair, it's reliable, it was cheap to buy. The other things that you may not think about is that they're cheap to insure. So for whatever reason, classic cars, the insurance rate on these is remarkably cheap. I believe it's because they just don't get in that many accidents, probably because the people that drive them are a lot more careful about what they're doing with their classic car, or they don't take them out in terrible weather where they might get in. I guess there's just maybe a lot less claims, because really insurance is really just about the mathematics of statistics for accidents and stuff. I'm not sure if that's the case, but this was remarkably cheap to insure, way cheaper than if I had a regular car. This is probably, it's at least less than half as much to insure this car as it would be to insure anything modern. And I've got collision on this because I think that was an automatic thing with these. So that's a bonus. And the other big bonus here is there's no depreciation on this car. The money I've got in this car, I'll be able to get out of it 2, 3, 4, 5 years easily, as long as I don't destroy the car between now and then. The depreciation is gone. They're doing nothing but maybe going up in value. So for all those reasons, the practicality and the economics of driving one of these cars, this is actually the smartest, in my mind, the smartest choice if you're looking for pure economics. So some of the advantages of driving these cars is, number one, they're fun to drive. The 3 in the tree thing took a little bit to get used to, but it's actually a lot of fun to drive, standard shift and this as well. It's a point of, this 3-on-the-tree transmission, by the way, is a real point of interest for a lot of people. When they come over to me and they talk to me about the car. That's another thing that happens with these cars. People are going to talk to you about what year is that? And I remember, but this is a real point of interest. Oh wow, because you don't see a 3-in-the-tree vehicle very often anymore. 3-in-the-tree, don't forget, was the base option. So it wasn't like an option to get this was the default, cheapest option you could buy at the time. The automatic transmission cost you a little bit more, and if you had a 4 on the floor or something like that might have been a different price, and that would have come with a different engine. So there's that. So yeah, they're fun to drive. It's distraction-free driving. So I don't have a screen, obviously, or things like that, or things to fiddle with. There's literally almost no controls in this thing. There's a switch for the lights, there's a switch for the wipers, and my shifter. Well, there's a radio. But I mean, there's nothing else. So it's very minimalist, distraction-free driving, and I have really come to appreciate that over the past few months. When I get in another car and it's got all kinds of stuff that you got to think about, it bothers me a little bit. There's nothing to think about in this. I can turn on the fan for the heater or for the defroster, but that's about it. I mean, so that's got a point. The other bigger point is this is like you're in a time machine. This is very much a connection to the past. I know it's a bit nostalgia, but it's more than that. When you're driving this, you remember what things used to be like. So we talk about, things have gone crazy since pandemic, and things are a lot different. So this is kind of a connection to a past, simpler time, where we just didn't worry about a lot of stuff like we do now. And this reminds me of that every single time I get in, turn the key. So I think that the value in that has been huge for me, bigger than I thought it was going to be. I really didn't think. We didn't have one of these growing up, in my family, and I don't remember. In fact, the oldest car that I remember that we had would have been, probably a 74 Buick would have been, and it would have been, more or less new at the time. But that's like my earliest memory. Let's get some gas in the car. $30 worth of gas. It still freaks me out how little gas I'm burning in this car. I'm used to putting 150 in my truck. Now it lasts longer, but still, it's literally half as much gas as I'm used to burning. So there's another thing. That's how it starts. It's just no different than any other car, any modern car, and this is a carburetor. So anybody tells you carburetors are, unreliable, whatever, if they're set up right and they're working right, it's no issue. Safety. This car does have seat belts. They're lap belts. So no shoulder belt. So that makes you uncomfortable. Well, that's just the way it is in these cars. There's no airbag. The safety in 1968 is certainly a lot different than the safety in 2025. It took a little getting used to driving this car, because there is definitely a different feel to these classics than a modern car, for sure. Even the way the suspension is, are kind of floaty and stuff. Modern cars a lot more, thunk, thud, thud, thud sort of thing, but So it took a little bit to get used to that. And also the steering. This is a standard steering, but it's not hard to steer because it's a very sort of high ratio steering. High ratio, low ratio. I'm not sure which, but anyway, you got to turn the wheel a lot more. Then, you know, rather than just doing that, you've got to actually hand over hand it to go around corners and things like that. So, and right when I first got it, I'm completely not used to that. I am now. It feels like second nature now, but it was got a floor vent, so bring some air in. The other thing that might be a little unsettling for people driving, well, this car in particular, and probably a lot of older classics, this has got four-wheel drum brakes, no disc brakes. I think the advantage to drum brakes is they last quite a long time. Disadvantages, maybe they don't grab as quick. This also does not have power brakes. So when you step on you've really got to step on the pedal to stop it. Now, I had a bear actually run in front of me a couple of days ago as I was driving up one of the highways, and I hit the brakes pretty hard. So if you stand on them, they'll work, but it does require, you know, a little bit of effort. And if you're not used to that, maybe that's a little bit unsettling, but that's just the way it was back then. You know, you give yourself a little more room, you drive accordingly, you don't tailgate people, and you pay attention to the road ahead for people pulling out in front of you. Another thing that happened to me was I was driving out, it was early one morning, it was kind of foggy, not great weather, whatever. Maybe this more so applies to Canada than it does in the States, but people are expecting to see daytime running lights. So they're expecting to see your lights on. I didn't have my lights on. And somebody pulled up to the end of the driveway, and they pulled right out in the middle of the road, and I had to kind of swerve around them. So I learned my lesson there. I turn on my headlights in the morning especially when people are not paying attention. Because there's an expectation people have built in now to see headlights, and especially LED lights coming at them, so it's almost like a laziness or something that, you know, so they didn't see any headlights coming at them and came out and didn't realize there was actually a car there, even though the car is bright blue, but that's the way it is. So there's a couple of little nuances like that. Not a big deal. Honestly though, this is it's a super comfortable car to drive. I love this bench seat. I wish they put bench seats in cars and stuff now, like they used to. I love these little triangle windows. If you don't want to roll the whole window down, or if it's raining or whatever, and you still want air in the car, or you want to defrost your window quickly, that was a great thing something that went away, and I'm not really sure the reason why it went away, but I love that little window thing. There's a lot to like about this, is what I'm saying. There's a lot to like about the experience of driving, but you have to be okay with driving one. Practically and economically, makes total sense. Now, in the wintertime, I'm not going to be driving this car. I am going to put it away for the winter, because around here, we salt the roads. It'll just be destroyed in no time, and I suspect it probably wasn't winter driven much, given the fact that it's not completely rotted out and didn't completely rust away already. So I suspect it wasn't its whole life. The car's got showing 91,000 miles on it now, almost 92,000 miles on it. And I tend to think that is actually 92,000 miles. I don't know if this car would have made 192,000, but I don't know, it's hard to say. It's had a lot, it was somebody's project, and that's key there too. This was somebody's project that had this completely blown apart. And I could tell because I see a lot of new bolts, a lot of new stuff all the way through the car. Somebody completely did this over. It was probably off the road for several years as somebody picked away at it and did it. And they probably have way more money and certainly more time in it than the money I paid for it. If you can find one of those, I think that's key to it. So I'm driving this not as an antique car, right? There's no antique plates, there's none of that kind of stuff on it. I just drive this as my regular car. This is what I go to work with, this is what I go to the store with, things like that. It's kind of an experiment in doing something like that. And honestly, the experience has been great. And if you think about this, 1968, obviously this was the daily driven car. People had no problem back then. There was, millions of cars on the road back in the late 60s, just like this. And this is what it was. This was the car, and there's many other cars like this. So people say, oh, you can't daily drive a classic. Well, people obviously did. And not everybody died on the road. It wasn't like, mayhem on the road. You are a little more careful when you drive one because you don't want to mess up your classic, but you also understand the limitations of it. I'm very much more connected to the driving experience. I feel everything in the steering wheel. I feel everything in the brake pedal. I'm shifting it manually, so I'm controlling what the engine does and the transmission does. I'm very much more in control. When you drive a modern car, like when I get in a modern car, to me, it feels like a video game. Like that's what you're doing because you're completely disconnected from the driving experience. Even the gas pedals are drive-by-wire now. They're not even connected to anything other than, electronic sensor. And there's even steering by wire now, right? And I have, the cars will control steering. My wife's Escape has the lane departure thing, and if you put on all that stuff and the cruise control on the highway and adaptive cruise and all that kind of stuff, you're basically just holding the steering wheel. It's doing everything for you. So you're driving a video game, simulation. I mean, you are completely disconnected. And when you become that disconnected from it, the consequences, I think, of driving like an idiot become less in your mind. I believe that you're very much less concerned with it because even if you did get in an accident, you're surrounded by airbags and all kinds of stuff. It's got collision sensors and things that will actually stop the car for you or pull it over to so. What we've done is we've avoided the responsibility of driving with modern cars. And I think that's really the point. These cars, you are completely responsible for everything that happens in this car. The maintenance on this car, the expectation in 1968 was that you did your own maintenance. It wasn't a big deal, and they set it up that way. If I need to change the spark plugs on this, no big deal. They're pretty visible. It's not a big deal. Once a year, you've got to check and adjust your points on the car. There's no electronic ignition. Again, not that hard to do. If you got a screwdriver and probably a business card or a matchbook, if you know what matchbooks are, you set your gap there. No big deal. The carburetor, you make the adjustments with a screwdriver. The expectation was you did all that stuff yourself. I can change the oil on this car without even getting underneath of it. I could reach the oil filter from right up front. I kick an oil pan under it, and I can actually undo the oil plug that's kind of on an angle. I don't even have to get under the car or put it up on anything to change the oil. The expectation was you looked after your stuff yourself. You did the basic stuff. And even the owner's manual came with the service stuff in it to explain how to do all that kind of thing. So that was the difference. We were much more responsible for the driving experience, for everything that happened back in the day than we are now. Now, they come with maintenance packages, oil changes can be, an ordeal of taking off a bunch of, to do basic maintenance on a modern car, even just the very basic stuff is getting more and more difficult all the time. When something does go wrong with modern cars, and it does all the time. It usually has something to do with electronics or sensors or things like that, or the engine light comes on, some kind of sensor somewhere. My wife's car has an engine light on right now. I checked the code on it, and it's some kind of evap code. So I took it into them. I had a program, Forscan, that I ran the diagnostics on her car with. Took screenshots of all the codes and the errors that came up about this code. Send it to them, and they're like, well, we have to see it because even that doesn't tell us what's wrong, and we're not really sure until we see it, and we have to try a couple of things because that code could mean any number of like, what? This is the most ridiculous thing I've heard of. If you have all this stuff, why isn't it telling you exactly what's wrong and what assembly you've got to change for, I don't know, $3,000 or whatever they're going to charge? It's asinine. It's a scam. And again, why I'm not playing in that space anymore. I'm just not going to do it. So back to the main point of this video. What's it actually like to drive a classic car? For me, it's been awesome. Practically, economically, it's a better choice than any other choice out there. It's a lot of fun. I get to talk to a lot of people. If you're okay with people asking you about your car, because I get asked about this thing all the time. I've done a couple of the typical classic car things. So I did drive it in a parade, which is a lot of fun in a standard shift, let me tell you. No, I'm kidding. Like, yeah. But I did have a lot of fun with that. I've gone to like a smaller local car show with it, and met a lot of great people. The car community is awesome, I gotta say. Like, I've met some great people that you just, I've made some friends. So there's that part of it. And I took it to actually a much bigger show that had like celebrities and stuff there. And that was a lot of fun too. And I talked to a lot of people about kind of the same topics. And it was a lot of fun. So I've done a couple of those things. You don't have to do those things. But I did them just because. I don't go to every car show or every show and shine or Cars and Coffee or all that stuff, and they have them all over the place. I didn't do any of that, but honestly, it's because I was doing other stuff, and if it's convenient to get to, I might do it. But about one of the only downsides to this car, and it's not going to apply to every car, but I think most of the sort of compact space cars like this, the six-cylinder cars, is highway driving. So it'll do it. In fact, I drove it 75 miles an hour from 3 hours away when I bought it, and I really shouldn't have, because I had really old tires on it, and the brakes blew up on the way home. But I did it anyway. But I avoid, I wouldn't say never, because I have driven on the highway here, at 70, 75 miles an hour, and it does it no problem. I don't really have an issue with that. I just don't know if I want to push it that far, because I really would like to have another gear to do that. I don't have a tachometer in the car, so I don't know how fast it's turning, but you can tell she's kind of at the point. And there's this orange line on the speedometer. It starts at 70 miles an hour and goes up to 120. And I suspect that means that, please don't drive me faster than 70 miles an hour for any length of time. So, again, the steering, this is not rack and pinion steering, right? This is the old style Pitman arm steering. It's low ratio. And the other point to it is, when this car was made, they had bias ply tires on it. So the alignment is actually set for bias ply tires. I obviously don't have bias plies on it. I think you can actually maybe buy them, but I don't have them. I have regular radial tires on it. So it handles a little differently than probably did from factory. So it's a little bit of, this isn't play in the steering wheel. This is just how much you need to steer the car. So, yeah, so I tend to avoid the big highway drive. So that's really the only kind of downside to it. I don't really need to do a lot of highway driving. Most of my driving is on exactly this kind of road. This car absolutely loves driving at 55 miles an hour. It seems to be the sweet spot for it. It's usually this kind of road that I'm on. It's a two-way highway, just because of where I live. If I was in a city, that would also be a little bit of a different story. I've done city driving with it. Not a big deal, but you are shifting a lot because it is a standard shift and it is a 3 in the tree, and it's not that big of a deal, but that would make it a little bit more, I don't know, difficult, I guess, to drive, because also the standard steering, it's not hard to steer. Like this, really, I can do this one finger, I can steer this car if it's driving. Dead stop's a little different story, right? You need a car moving with standard steering to, anyway. But we've had standard steering in cars right up to the 90s. Maybe even more recent than that, I'm not really sure. Not a big deal. Where's I going with this? Oh yeah, so the overall experience has been great, actually. I absolutely love driving this pile of crap. It's not a pile of crap, I know. It's been a solid, reliable car, but I absolutely love driving this. I love the experience of it. It's comfortable for me. It's the right size. There's lots of headroom. I'm 6'1", and lots of room even if I'm wearing a hat. But it's not a big car. It's not hard to park. It's been great. So anybody considering going this route and saying no to car payments and saying no to modern cars, modern car industry, I would encourage it if you're willing to drive. Maybe if you know somebody that has one, maybe if you've never driven a car from the late 60s, 70s, see if you can find somebody that has one and try it. See if they'll let you try it or whatever, because it is a different experience. And if you're not prepared for that, you might be surprised and maybe a little unsettled. But I mean, the other thing you can do is just jump in with both feet. I've driven old cars, but I drove them a long time ago, so I kind of forgot when I was buying this car what the actual experience was like. So for me, I have this weird connection to this car now that I've had it for a few months. I wouldn't give it up for anything. And this has been the greatest, one of my better decisions, I think, was to do this. I am done, like I said, with the new car industry. I'm not going there anymore. I have a connection to driving this car. I think it's, like I was saying, it's the connection of I'm in control of absolutely everything on this car. I can feel the road in the steering. I can feel the road in the brakes. As I'm shifting, I can feel the power delivery, and I know exactly how that power band works now that I'm used to it. So I am the one driving the car, not a computer, not a bunch of sensors, not things like that. And I think that's what it is really about for me. I've heard the same thing come from people who drive motorcycles. They like the be in control of everything. It's I think that's the experience. And financially, this has been a great decision. I can sell this for more than what I got in it, and it's not going to depreciate. It's been extremely good on gas. I've saved a huge amount of money on gas these past few months by driving this just about all the time. And so no regrets for me to drive one of these cars. It's not for everybody. I understand that. Some people are not going to be comfortable with, the no airbags, no shoulder belt. But it doesn't bother me in a bit. And you drive a little more carefully when you drive these cars, I think, because you understand the limitations of it. When you're driving a modern car, you're so disconnected, it's basically a video game. And if you got into some bad accident, you're probably going to walk away without a scratch anyway. So you pay a little less attention. I don't like that. So that's what the experience has been for me. And I recommend anybody so inclined that is interested in these cars to maybe think about it and start looking around. Check on Marketplace. This is where I found this car. I found this car on Marketplace, and I don't know, for some reason it spoke to me. But check around on Marketplace. Now, if you're looking to daily drive something and you're concerned about things like fuel mileage, stay away from the land yachts and things like that. Anything with a 455, 454 Chev or one of those cars, yeah, you're going to spend the money on gas. But the simpler 6-cylinder ones, which tend to be the cheapest ones on Marketplace or wherever your online favorite online marketplace is, a few $1,000s will get you a good one. You can buy one that needs a lot of work for $1,500 probably, or $2,000. But you can buy something that was somebody's project that had a lot of time for a few $1,000s, and you can drive it for years and never lose a dime on it. So I guess that's my message. It's a little different way of looking at driving. Sometimes people look at me a little strange, like, this is your car, this is what you drive? Yes, this is what I drive. Whatever. Some people might find it odd. Most people actually find it cool. And that's not really why I'm doing it. But most people are like, that's awesome. I wish I had a car like that. Well, go get one. What's stopping you? Thanks for watching.